Thank you very much for joining us for another one of our English seminars. The breeding season is almost on our doorstep, scarily. So our topic today is the purchasing and managing of broodmares. I'm Gemma Cutting from Inglis. My co-host is Will Gardner, Willie G. I will introduce our panel very shortly, but I must firstly thank AgriFutures, who have partnered with us to bring you these seminars each year. We had one in Sydney, which you can look at online, and of course we've got this one today, and we really thank them for their support. We have a video to play firstly, and Ryan Arnel from AgriFutures will then give us a little introduction.
Australia's thoroughbred breeding industry is one of the largest in the world, contributing $1.68 billion to the economy and supporting over 9,000 full-time jobs across regional Australia. But world-class industries don't stay that way without investment. The AgriFutures Thoroughbred Horses program takes the levy paid by every breeder and, with leveraged funding from the Commonwealth Government, turns it into research that makes a real difference. We work across 4 priorities: the health and welfare of horses and the people who work with them, smarter, more sustainable breeding outcomes, a skilled and supported industry workforce, and better management of the diseases and parasites that threaten horses every season. It's research that gives buyers and sellers greater confidence at yearling sales. Research that's strengthening biosecurity and farm management practices across the country. Research that's advancing the next wave of innovation, from disease-targeted vaccines to new reproductive management technologies, helping the industry stay ahead. And through initiatives like the Les Young Scholarship, we're investing in the people who will carry this industry forward. Guided by an advisory panel of breeders, veterinarians and industry experts, every dollar is directed where the industry needs it most. That's what the AgriFutures Thoroughbred Horses program is built for. Practical research that makes the industry stronger today and into the future. AgriFutures Thoroughbred Horses program. Investing in the future of Australian thoroughbred breeding.
Thank you, AgriFutures, for their support of our seminars. Ryan Arnel from Stonehouse Thoroughbreds, they're really doing a lot of research, not just for agriculture and our regional communities, but in specifics for our group here, the thoroughbred sector. Can you elaborate on some of the great work AgriFutures is doing?
Yeah, so every time we do a mare return, for instance, there's $10 from that goes to AgriFutures, and every time a mare is covered, there's $10 from that goes to AgriFutures. So AgriFutures is our research and development arm for the thoroughbred industry. So we listen to our state bodies and our national body, whether it be TBA or TBV down here in Victoria, and any issues that become evident in our industry, they'll approach us, and we'll show the universities or researchers what we want them to do, and then they'll go out and and cover the topics for us and get the evidence and find out what the answers are.
So you can go to their website for more information. Caitlin Smith, you can also contact, and Ryan Arnel is here at Oaklands if you'd like to find out anything extra about AgriFutures. Now to introduce our panel for today's seminar, Dr. Katie Wilcox is with us from the Arnel Equine Hospital, and you bring valuable veterinary expertise to the broodmare discussion today, Katie. You're a director and a veterinarian, and you've worked across major stud seasons here in Australia and the UK, with particular interests in reproduction and foal medicine, alongside extensive experience servicing stud clients and supporting the yearling sales radiography. So welcome, Dr. Katie Wilcox. Ryan Arnel, Stonehouse Thoroughbreds, brings a hands-on approach to breeding, farming and international stud experience in your past to the broodmare discussion here today, Ryan. A great introduction for you. Thanks, Willie G. From agricultural roles across Australia to the Marcus Oldham College, Mickley Stud and Tween Hills Farm, you have built Stonehouse into a very respected Victorian broodmare, agistment and yearling preparation farm. James Ferguson is on the end there. James from Bell River Thoroughbreds, a lifetime of breeding and bloodstock experience that we're very grateful to have your expertise here today for the seminar. You were raised at Bell River Thoroughbreds, and you've been shaped by that experience that you've had with Highclere Stud, John Warren, McKeever Bloodstock, and now you're back working at Bell River, where you have been for a few years now, alongside your father Andrew, your wife Mary, and brother Jock. So you're continuing that exceptional record that your farm has of producing elite performers. And David Whishaw from Tasmania, we're so grateful to have you here too, David, from Armidale Stud. Generations of Tasmanian breeding knowledge for this discussion today. It's the stud has been in your family since the early 1900s, which is just amazing. And it became a thoroughbred operation in the 60s. And you're the eldest son of Dennis and Robin, and you completed a Bachelor of Agricultural Science in Hobart before you went back to the stud to implement your ideas there and take on that management role at Armidale Stud alongside your wife, Rhiannon, who would love to be here this week, but is back home holding the fort. We will have time for questions at the end, so if you do think of something, just keep it in your mind and we will bring the microphone around at the end for you. So here we go. Our first topic for today is purchasing and managing broodmares. That's our seminar. So pedigree, type or race record. It's the age-old question. What really makes a broodmare valuable? Now I'm going to open this up to anyone who wants to jump in first. When you are assessing a potential broodmare purchase, and let's talk about young mares to start with, how do you balance pedigree, physical type, the race record, maybe their produce record, and their value overall? Who wants to go first? So do you look at the sire of the mare? Do you look at black type in the first dam? Do you look at her own yielding price? How do you assess it? Ryan, do you want to go first? What makes a broodmare valuable?
I was looking at James then to see if he'd go first, but look, for me, pedigree is the start of it. That gives us the basis of what we want to achieve and what we want to look at. Following that, the three areas you've sort of described there, they all hold significant weight themselves. And physical type gives you the phenotype tells you what you're going to get. And then the race record shows you what the pedigree could produce and the ability of that pedigree. So I think, all three hold significant weight, but ultimately for me, the pedigree is where we start.
So a pedigree win out for you even if the mare herself hasn't performed well, just out of interest on the racetrack. Like, she's not a non-metro winner. If her pedigree is strong, does that hold more weight to you than, say, she's a stakes winner with a light pedigree? Or does it depend on her type?
It depends on her, but it's, again, going back, that's the start of it, isn't it? So if she's a little bit lighter in the pedigree with the stakes results and whatnot, but if she's a phenomenal type and she might have some race record ability with her previous progeny or something, then that will hold more weight that way.
David, and I guess you can also look at the family as well, what's coming through. You've got to turn the switch. Yep, that's it. What makes a broodmare valuable to you?
I guess for us, we're looking for value in the market, Jem, and so it's weighing up those three things. The phenotype, as Ryan has alluded to, at the end of the day, if you're breeding to sell a commercial product, phenotype has become so important. So phenotype is certainly carrying more weight for us than it was 20 years ago. Historically, we purchased mares wholly on pedigree. We felt the pedigree continued to perform generation after generation. So you were buying into elite pedigrees even one generation away. So you might have bought into a great black type family and you might be buying the mare that's unraced or only a minor winner, but she's from such a deep page. We used to really put a huge amount of value on that. We certainly put an increasing amount of value on phenotype now, because at the end of the day we bring the phenotype to the sale, and the game has changed so much in my short time. It's nearly become a fashion industry now when you're selling something at the yearling sale, and if you've got a good phenotype with a lighter page, people are still certainly likely to launch into it. But then we love running mares. You know, at the end of the day, we are breeding yearlings to sell, but our passion is breeding elite racehorses and seeing form on the track, consistent city-winning black type mares. They do the job on the racetrack year after year when they go to the broodmare barn. So we're actually probably putting more weight on phenotype and race record than we are on pedigree nowadays.
And James or David, it's the same when you're talking about the fashion side of things. The broodmare side becomes so important because what you want to sell, what people want to buy from at the yearling sales, they want to look at the broodmare sire and know it, and know that that's a proven producing stallion. Is that right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Between myself, my brother and father, we have quite a lot of discussions, and I think Pedigree matters at the Magic Millions Broodmare sale and the Chairman sale and on English Digital, and then I think it all goes out the window when you come to the yearling sales. It seems as though tight at the yearling sales overwrite to Pedigree. One of the things that I love doing every Sunday afternoon is actually going through the black type results, looking at the families, and 9 times out of 10, whether it's an old family from 1990 or a modern day family, those families keep producing, whether it's out of a group winning mare or a mare that can't even win a maiden plate out at Warren in country New South Wales. So Pedigree is very important to us. But as I said, nowadays, you do have to back it up with a physical type come yearling time. But yeah, we're pretty open-minded as long as they do come back to a good pedigree. A couple of people do throw out that city winning mares and group producing mares have a higher percentage of stakes winners to runners. There's no doubt about that, but I think they are given the best chance at start by going to the best stands from the get-go. But yeah, as I said, pedigree is first and foremost for us, for sure.
And Katie?
From my point of view, I think it's very important, because I'm usually advising people, that they have a goal. Are you breeding to race? Are you breeding to sell? And I think if you're breeding to sell, the race record is important, and less so if you're breeding to race. Most of the best broodmares I've worked with have been unraced sisters of Group 1 winners or daughters of Group 1 winners. But when you're breeding to sell, the commercial element comes in, and if you're a really famous race mare on the track, then that's going to go into the ring. So obviously type also is incredibly important. But
It's hard.
But I do think, you need a buyer with a clear purpose.
Yep. And so when a new buyer that's keen to get into the breeding industry approaches, I suppose, any 4 of you, there's obviously due diligence that has to be done before purchasing a broodmare. Preg certs, breeding records, going through the page. What are some of the most important factors to take in when you want to spend money on your first broodmare?
Looking at your first broodmare purchase, look, I think at the end of the day, you've just got to start with a very strong reproductive history, because ultimately that's what's going to assure you get a foal in the first place. So if you're looking at that, there's physical side of it as well. Like, you've just got to have a physically sound mare, and that gets you your start, doesn't it? You've got a good mare in the paddock that's going to produce your foal.
Do you ask about temperament? Do they need? Is that important? Do you ask to see a breeding cert? Look at the breeding record, as you did mention, Katie.
100%. I mean, I think temperament is incredibly important, because they've got to make a good mum. There's no point in having some neurotic animal that is going to get stressed easily. That's going to cause pregnancy loss. It's going to make her maybe not accept the foal easily. And obviously, for the people working with her, it's also going to cause them some dramas. So temperament is underestimated. Obviously, if you're coming to assessment at sale or they're online, you can only ascertain from conversations with the manager of the previous farm and the previous owners about the temperament. But I would say that is incredibly important. And again, those fantastic broodmares that have gone on to produce multiple Group 1 winners usually have an exceptional broodmare temperament. And on the, obviously, due diligence on the breeding front is important. Veterinary certificate, the EVA produce a very good form, which, we assess all areas of the reproductive tract. And then, but the most recent breeding history is very important. That last year, what happened? If they're not in foal, why are they not in foal? Did they have a bad foaling? Is that why they were arrested? Have they had issues getting in foal? What stallion were they going to? Is that why they're not in foal? There's many factors to consider on that front.
And James, with the digital market becoming so popular and the ease of being able to sell, less stress on mares, how do you build confidence buying on digital? And are there advantages and disadvantages to selling on digital?
I think we're grateful for COVID, as much as I hate doing videos and photos of yearling myself, but it changed the game, and we've now got videos and photos of what they look like as yearlings, then you see them as mares. So if you do your homework, you can pretty much nearly see a horse from when it was a weanling to a mare now. So it's just literally about doing your homework and going through the process and seeing if you're comfortable. We've bought 2 recently online that weren't uploaded properly, photos and videos, but we knew what they were like as foals and as yearlings. So we backed our judgment off our reports when we saw them in their younger days, and then seeing their yearling videos as well. At the end of the day, it's just doing as much homework as you can, speaking to the people that you trust as well, and then just backing your judgment to go forward.
David, Flying Crupt, the dam of Aristopolis, was a private purchase through your bloodstock agent that you work with, Adrian Hancock, with the FBAA. She was stakes placed in Adelaide by Crupt. What made her the right mare to buy? Because she's first foal's a stakes winner, 6 from 6, quite amazing, but and her second foal's a winner as well. So what made her at the time the right mare to buy when you're looking at her?
The reality is probably price. As Larry Ender says, the price was right. We're trying to buy mares year in, year out, and we find we come to the broodmare sales and we clash heads with everyone from, Ryan or James to Yulong. They land on the mares that you love, and we need to put a value on things that we can make a living out of. We're trying to breed great racehorses, but we're trying to put food on the table doing it. So finding value is really, really important for us. And she landed in the value bracket for us. Adrian Hancock had bought us a handful of mares off the track. We'd given him some criteria that we wanted to work with, and by all means, she's not perfect. She's by Crupt, which a lot of people would say, oh, geez, he's not a broodmare sire. But for me, he's a son of Flying Spur, who was a leading broodmare sire. So we've got to forgive things to be able to afford some of these mares. She wasn't stakes placed in Melbourne. She was stakes placed in Adelaide.
I meant Adelaide. I did write Adelaide.
But she was
Sorry.
to me, she was a Melbourne City winner. She won at benchmark, I think 84 from memory at Caulfield. She ran round at Flemington in a couple of benchmark 90s. She ran round 5th and 6th in stakes races. I think she weighed in 14 times out of 21 or 2 starts. So for me, she was a great running mare. She was stakes placed, and she had an okay depth of pedigree, and the price was right. We felt there was a chance that she'd throw us a good horse, and there was an earn in it for us, and at the price. If she was by Vinny and a Melbourne stakes placed mare at 2 and a good type, suddenly she's 400 or 500 grand rather than 75 grand. And so then what we need to spend to mate her, a mare like that, we can put to our own stallion first up, to mitigate risk. We got a great result. We got it sold and eats further for 80,000, and then we said it was a good type first foal, and then we can bat up, which we have, and we have the half brother to Aristopolis here by King's Gambit, and it gives you that confidence to then spend some money on those mares.
That's on the screen there. That is lot 410 at the Great Southern Sale on Friday. For you guys, Armadale Stud, that's the half brother by King's Gambit. And that's an example of the research. I'm sure I'm telling everyone what they know, but not just looking at her record on paper, actually going and looking at her replays, seeing how she performed, the horses that she had form around in Melbourne. It can say a lot more than what it reads on a form when you look at it on Arian.
Yeah, certainly. We used to look at the pedigree page, and it might say MRC or AJ, ATC, and we'd just go, oh, it was a city winner, so we'd buy them, and we've sort of been bitten doing that. You then buy this mare and you look up and you're like, God, she won a week benchmark 58 in the city. And so now we're trying to buy mares. If we are holding a winner to account, we'll look at where it is and what sort of form is around that win and at what level they race to.
Yep. So moving on to topic 2, the hidden risks and mare management, purchasing and maintaining health in broodmares. Katie, we'll start with you from a vet's point of view. What reproductive history, and I know we've touched on it already, but vet checks and scans are essential before buying a broodmare?
Reproductive checks are essential, but also, you've got to look at the whole mare. Is she decent size? Has she got good feet? Has she got good conformation? Has she got, and then, going on to reproductive examination, has she got good perineal conformation? Obviously we're assessing the ovaries. Unfortunately, most broodmares seem to come on sale this time of year when they're not cycling. So that's a little bit difficult to quantify. Obviously, you want a uterus without loads of fluid. If it's not cycling, it shouldn't have estrous pattern. That would indicate endometritis. You don't want them to have any cervical abnormalities. You want, the vagina and the perineum to all look good. So, you 100% you need to do a reproductive examination if you're buying a broodmare, and you don't want to take any risk.
How much can good management, nutrition, and environmental influence a mare's reproductive success? How much do those factors play a role?
I think they're incredibly important. I mean, if you can be the best vet in the world and have a sound mare, yet if the management's not right, then you can have issues. So, if you're new to the industry, you want to go to a proven farm where you've got a knowledgeable manager. He's got a good team. He's got a good vet. He's got a good farrier. You want your asset to be looked after, and it's a team. Everything has to come together to make it work. So, yeah, it's all important.
Are there any findings when you do the scans or checks that are deal breakers, or that you would advise your clients that do not buy this mare?
But if I'm looking at a mare for pre-purchase, I don't want to find any fluid in the uterus. I don't want to find anything that I consider might be a tumor on an ovary. I don't want to find any cervical abnormalities. I mean, there's various things you can manage, but any issues with the cervix is probably a major one for me. And obviously, if you've got to find a tumor, then that's a $5,000 surgery that you probably don't want to put into your budget for purchase. But some mares you may like. It all depends on the client and how much they're prepared to invest in that mare and what their result they want to have.
Touching on management of broodmares, Ryan, you would have, I suppose, testing of soil and of the pastures. And does that correlate to how much you feed the mares, or all the mares get the same amount of feed?
Yeah, no, definitely. So nutrition plays a huge part, obviously, whether it be bringing a mare into season ready for cover or a pregnant mare that's ready for foaling. So as we come through these winter periods now, we're looking at, we want our mares on a rising plane of nutrition. So we don't want them too fat, we don't want them too thin. We just want a perfect condition score where they're just rising up to get to that early September time where they're ready to go. Cortisol plays a huge part for us, which is a stress hormone, and I find it really plays with the estrogen hormones when we're coming into the breeding season. So keeping them happy, keeping them comfortable, keeping them just calm, collected. That's what we want to aim for on our farm when we're getting them up to the breeding season.
David, from your perspective, management?
Yeah, just echoing Ryan's thoughts. I think doing whatever you can to mitigate stress. So we certainly would be setting our mobs and trying not to change them as we go into breeding, and then after they're cover and they've been ovulated off. At times, our team would, there might be an easy option to switch a mare into a mob or pull a mare out into isolation. And I'll always encourage them to put that mare back to the mob because they're herd animals. And when you change the pecking order, you increase stress. And increasing stress is the best form of infertility. Once again, nutrition, keeping them on a rising plane of nutrition, keeping your dry mares probably lighter than you'd see them at the sales. So probably a condition score or two lighter than you'd like to see them coming out of winter, because then you can flush them, give them a head of protein with spring grass, and you'll find that first ovulation fertility be much, much better if you can do that. And as Ryan said, just that nutrition of your broodmare in the last trimester is just imperative. I think about 65% of the foal's fetus is developed in the last trimester. So making sure you've got adequate pasture, they've got adequate protein, they need their omega-3s, their omega-6s, their vitamin E is imperative to getting a decent foal. And I think we all put so much work into our mare purchases and then our matings, and at times some smaller breeders might let themselves down with that basic nutrition, especially in the last trimester.
Yeah, great. James, Katie?
Can I just reiterate that I would 100% support what you've just said, and that last trimester is incredibly important. You want to have them on a rising plane during that trimester, but you don't want them to be fat already, because then you're going to get problems foaling. So that's really important to manage throughout the whole year. And I think, you know, when you're coming to sale, everyone wants a fat mare. No one wants a fat mare when it's falling down. And then same with the dry mares, when you're coming to breed them, they want to be on a rising plane of nutrition as well.
James, we've spoken about younger mares, nutrition. There can also be very good opportunities in buying older mares. I'm going to give you a little bit of a plug here. But you bought Broodmare in 2020 as a 16-year-old mare empty, and then made it to her extreme choice, $800,000 yearling, and then the following year, a retain, which ended up being Group 3 winner as a 2-year-old, but pre-Christmas, Broodmare C. What gave you confidence in purchasing that mare?
I touched on it earlier, people you can trust. So I was lucky, I rang Adrian Hancock. He actually looked at Golden Farm's entire herd when they're up for dispersal. And the number one thing when you're buying older mares is to make sure they're still in good nick. If they're too far gone, 9 times out of 10, you won't be able to bring them back. And at that stage, you just got to forget about them. But I was lucky that Adrian's a very well-respected human in the industry. He gave us great confidence. Andrew actually tried to buy Broodmare as a yearling. She was a stunning yearling. So again, we knew our homework on her. And her breeding record, she'd never miss a year to go with it. So, and touching on nutrition, we do have a couple of older mares on farm that our goal is to breed fillies out of from great families down the track. And we actually run our older mares together. They're generally getting fed much more than our younger mares. And we also just rug them over the course of winter, which is like giving them an extra feed. As I said, once you lose the condition on an older mare, you're pretty much forgetting about them very quickly.
Katie, how early should reproductive planning begin before the breeding season? Obviously, we've spoken about nutrition and I suppose building nutrition up and then during term. But is there reproductive planning that needs to happen long before the breeding season?
Well, managing mares occurs all year round. So I think, you know, in the lead up to the season, the nutrition is important. If you've bought a mare, then yes, you know, like I would examine mares that come back from being bought. Especially if they're in foal, make sure that there is no signs of any placentitis or anything you need to be on top of there. And also those dry mares, I mean, if they've had a pre-breeding check, they should be sound. But look at them early in August to see if anything else needs to be done before the season.
Yep, and sorry to butt in.
I mean, you can't do too much before they start cycling, so...
You do a lot with Street Boss, who's known within the industry for being a little bit tricky. How are mares managed into him, and tell us about your experience with him?
Well, we get all the mares in for vetting, which I know probably frustrates many Victorian breeders. But we feel, you know, that really helps our pregnancy rates. I mean, some mares are managed fantastically, and there is no issue with how they're set up. But, you know, some other farms, you know, we do find that we need to adjust things a little bit. It also gives us, you know, the chance to line, if he's busy, to line him up in an appropriate fashion. So, and then we were able to give our dads at least 36 hours before cover, and make sure that that mare is on the verge of ovulation when she gets covered.
What are the warning signs for any of you, really, when you're looking at mares that they might be difficult to foal down or manage with a foal? Is it the fact she's a maiden? Is it if that she's on edge? You sort of touched on it before about temperament. Are there warning signs to any of you when you're looking at a mare or you know of a mare's history?
Yeah, there's definitely warning signs out there, and it's obviously differs with each individual mare too. So temperament's definitely one. We're watching them, weeks, even months out of foaling. We're always watching and seeing their movements and how they're responding to different things around the farm. They like physical signs, like are they uncomfortable? How's their udder growing? Like, is it growing at an acceptable rate? Is it not there? Is she starting to lactate early? There's many warning signs there.
Now, David, I've been told by a good source, because I haven't been to Armidale, but your paddocks are very large and all the mares are able to run in the large paddocks during, and even the young horses growing up. Very good strike rate last year. 8 stakes winners off the farm. How do you manage young horses and I suppose mares in those big paddocks?
Yeah, I guess we're blessed. We've had an exceptional season. We've had a couple of seasons where we've had 7 stakes winners off the farm, but to beat that last year with 8 stakes winners out of 50 foals raised was just huge. And I would like to thank some of my staff that are here tonight. We've got a wonderful team that do an exceptional job, and I believe we're blessed with the climate that we have and the farm that we have. I certainly couldn't stump up and buy it all to do what we're doing now, so I'm blessed to have been given the chance to carry on that family legacy, and I think the climate in Tassie is what sets us apart. We certainly don't have the bloodlines or the money or the disposable income to buy the best mares, but we certainly work hard to continue to produce tough sound racehorses, and I think we really are traditional horse breeders. We're not horse traders. The industry has turned largely into trading. We're all here trying to sell foals. We're all trying to buy mares to put them in foal and flip them. But we really take a long-term view. We're buying mares to try and give them, to try and set them up and prove them as broodmares and for them to have a home for life. We run them like we've always run them, in large paddocks, in large mobs. So we run our mares in mobs of up to 20, 22. We run our weanlings into mobs of 10, 12. They run in big paddocks. About 80% of their diet is pasture, and mainland Australia can't get over how little hard feed our stock get. Our pregnant mares get through into the last trimester with zero hard feed, and they don't need it. Our record says they don't need it. Physically, you can see that they don't need it. We run pastures like you would see on a dairy farm, and rotational grazing is very important for us. We run 500 cattle, we fatten 3,000 lambs, and all our pastures will be cross-grazed with both cattle and lambs. So it's a very different looking farm to what you would expect when you go to a lot of the commercial farms in Victoria or New South Wales. It certainly doesn't have the gold statue or the flash fencing that we would love, but it's got very practical fencing, and I think the large paddock size and running them like they would run in the wild within reason sets us up for success. That being said, there's certain horses that need special management. Yes, mares get rugged at home. Yes, mares get put in smaller paddocks. Foals get confined when they have angular limb deformities. We are micromanaging things as well, but when we don't need to, they're run like they would run in the wild, and I think it certainly sets them up for racetrack success. It mightn't set them up for elite sales success all the time, but I think the race record is what we're really most proud of, and I think those results speak for themselves.
James, do you have any methods that you guys engage on your property? Because you went from one, I think it was south of Sydney, where Extreme Choice was bred by your family, and then you're north of Sydney now in a beautiful area, not far from the coast. You get a lot of rainfall, I imagine, there. What are your methods and, I guess, paddock management and that sort of thing in managing mares?
Yeah, very different to what we did out in Western New South Wales growing up. Completely two different farms. Again, you've got a different farm to me, Dave, and same as Ryan. So We first thing we did when we moved is did a soil test and then applied fertilizer to the necessary where we needed to. But the biggest thing we've learnt where we are now, we actually have to do a lot of mulching. That's just part of what we did, and we have a high rotation. So come with that because we have a high rotation. We've got to be mindful of our worm count, so we're pretty aggressive on our worm count from broodmares right through to weanlings and yearlings. We only have 170 acres. I'd love to have a huge farm like Dave. But simple to what he said about having large paddocks, we've actually got on our paddocks, we've got a black post that's where the feed bins get moved to on a daily basis, and then they've got to go back to the starting zone in the paddock to keep the horses walking, keep the mares active, especially when they're in foal. The number one thing I do at this time of the year, if our mares aren't moving, well, then I'm feeding them too much. So it's sort of analysing your stock, analysing the season, and then getting to know your land, how far you can push it versus when you need to back off at the same time. I loved our property out at Wellington. If we could have picked it up and moved to where we are, it'd be amazing. But we've sort of adjusted our methods to fit what we're currently doing. Dave's obviously not a hard feed man. Where we are now, we make up for hard feed. We're pretty solid on our feed. And that's just because we have predominantly a kikuyu-based grass over the summer. So what we like to do, from the minute they're born, the hard feed is treated as their main diet rather than the horses actually relying on the pastures.
Group 1 winners off all farms, and none one are the same. It's it's very interesting for people listening that it doesn't have to be the same hard and fast rule for every property or state that you are. So a lot of opportunities for people listening to learn that. But our last topic today is problematic mares, commercial opportunity or costly mistake. What are the pros and cons of buying an older proven mare compared to a younger unproven mare? We've sort of discussed that a little bit at the start where we talk about pedigree versus type versus race record, but pros and cons of those proven mares that have the age and the younger unproven mare that might have the flashy pedigree or race record off the track.
Well, obviously, the older mare, it's going to have a more proven track record, isn't it? Like, we're going to know what she's produced, what she's done on the track, and we're going to have a lot more information and knowledge about her. The younger mare is simply just going to be generally more fertile. You're going to have a fresh, young, fertile mare, but the unknowns are greater, aren't they? We don't know what she can produce yet. We've got her pedigree to go on, we've got her phenotype, but we don't have her what she can actually produce and racetrack record in that sense.
I guess it's a quicker return for that older mare if they're already commercial. That's, you get that commercial return a bit easier, a bit quicker.
You touched on fertility. Is there a certain age, Katie, that fertility can drop, I suppose, in stallions and mares, or is it a case-by-case basis?
Well, I think as we get older, we become less fertile in every species. So, yeah, buying an older mare, you're not. It is case dependent, and some mares are more fertile into their older age, so it's worth looking at the pedigree, her dam, her sisters, what they've been producing. But yeah, in general, they will their fertility will decrease, and the more foals they have, their fertility will decrease just because of the trauma to the uterus. So if you're scanning her and she's got multiple cysts and things, that's indicative of damage to the uterine lining. So you can whip those out, but there's still that fibrosis on the uterine wall that's never going to disappear. And when people say, she's produced 2 stakes winners and I bought her for a bargain at the age of 21, well, it's like breeding from your grandma. Like she's like that uterus has done its job. Like I know your mare produced very well later into her age, but most most mares, the statistics is they produce their best horse in the first 4 years. So it does have to be taken with a pinch of salt, but I wouldn't encourage a new breeder to buy an old mare. It's more if you've got the expertise and you've already got mares and you're already set up on a farm and they can manage it well, then that's maybe worth taking that risk. And and there are a number of things as a vet we can do to assist those older mares. And I know one of my friends, Bridget McClanahan, has made his mark originally buying old mares. So and now he's a very successful breeder and has probably given up most of his veterinary stuff. So it does depend who you are and what your risk, what your assessment of risk is.
And as you said, what you're breeding for, because David, the dam of Mystic Journey, White Gold, had her at 13, and I think she was more of, as you said, you bred for her to be a good racehorse, not necessarily a hot, fashionable sales horse. How important was that you were looking for that result with her and that 13-year-old age?
I guess you framed the previous question at looking at older proven mares. And obviously, if you've got an older proven mare, there's a market for her stock. If she's got 3 or 4 horses that are city winners or stakes winners, every trainer of that stakes winner is going to be lining up for the next foal. So if you've got a proven mare, you've got half your market sewn up before you get to the sales. I guess then you've got those mares in limbo, and I saw the team from Grenville Stud here earlier today. There are other breeders down in Tassie, so you start buying those mares that might be carrying their 4th or 5th foal. They might have had 1 or 2 to the track. They might be middling along, and you might set yourself up for a huge victory or a huge loss. By the time you get your 5th foal to the sale, she might be 3 to race for duck eggs. Or in their instance, they might buy a Tier who suddenly the 4th foal becomes a multiple Group 1 winner, wins the Everest, and then you're in for a big payday. So you start buying those mares in limbo is a huge area of risk, is the way I see it. And, for someone that really is struggling to buy mares commercially, we're working hard at it, but we find we're continually outgunned by people with deeper pockets than us. But those mares that are on their 4th or 5th foal, there's a heap of risk. But there is the potential for that upside. And then you look at a mare like White Gold, that when she went to Needs Further, she'd had 3 to race for 1 winner. And she was done commercially. The page was done. But for the breeding purists or the people that believe in line breeding, believe in reinforcing female lines, which I love and my family loves. And I think statistically, if you look at it, it is very potent. But sadly, our yearling sale market doesn't really recognise that anymore. The people that used to stump up and buy a yearling on the way it was bred, on mares that it was line bred to, those people have gone. We're looking for a sexy product by a sexy stallion that looks sexy, and they just want to be able to relate to something that they punted on at the races. So Mystic Journey was a sentimental breed, and I think all breeders at times breed sentimentally, but a mare like her had 0 economic value, and the resulting yearling had bugger all economic impact. The Mystic Journey sold for $11,000. Why? The mare had 3 to race for 1 minor winner. She hadn't won, and the pedigree was dead. But I think it proves that if you want to play the long game and you believe in what you do, you can turn a pedigree that was worth nothing and a yearling that was worth $11,000 into a broodmare that's worth $2 million. But it's a long play and it's a big risk.
Thanks, David. Very good answer. Ryan, you purchased Justice Glory at Chairman's in 2022 for $220,000. Her next 3 foals made $140, $260, and the Toronado made $160 at Great Southern last year. And our man on the end bought it. Is that correct?
Given it to Prep.
Given it to Prep, and it ended up making $375 at Premier. So everyone's a winner. Talk us through the purchase of Justice Glory. She's on the screen.
Yeah, it's clearly I got a discount because she's got no tail there. But no, when I'm buying mares, and it's not always the case, but I try and make it my case, is I start at the end and work backwards. So being a Victorian farm, I'm a big supporter of Victorian sales and Victorian stallions, Toronado being one of my favourites down here and arguably probably one of the best at the moment. I bought a mare specifically for Toronado. So I'd already done the pedigree research, and that's what I was looking for. So then I go to the sales. I found her to be the right phenotype for that mating, and then worked my way backwards. So the end goal was to produce a Toronado for a Melbourne sale, and that's what we've managed to produce a couple of times in a row. So it was, that was one of the lucky ones.
Yeah. So basically, working back from a plan that you had to target a certain stallion to buy a certain type and pedigree to target that stallion, and it's obviously paid off.
I think it's imperative that we've got to, when buying your mare, and especially your first mare, you've got to start with, you've got to have an end goal. So for me, it was that was the scenario. If it's for the racetrack, if it's for any certain sale, or a stallion that you may already have a service fee for, or you want to support, that's a good starting point, and work your way back through phenotype, race record, and pedigree.
Katie, what makes a mare difficult or high risk? And I suppose looking at mares that miss, slip, their reproductive history, which we've touched on. I provide example from today. If we can skip to the next slide. White Time went through the sale today. She's obviously in foal to the Autumn Sun, purchased for 170 grand. She had a good breeding record 3 years in a row and now has left the listed place Bourbon Time, but she had 2 years where she missed. And I suppose it's important to do your due diligence and touch base with them. I've spoken to Linda Mons, and after the second year of missing, they flushed her ovary ducts and she went in foal straight away to the Autumn Sun. So I suppose, is it doing your due diligence, learning why they miss, slip?
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely need to, if you're purchasing a broodmare, need to find out as much as you can about her breeding history. So your first port of call is the stud book. Talk to the manager. If you can, get the breeding records from the past year or two, and maybe even have a chat to the vet. So, any mare that's missed a couple of years in a row, and I can't find anything else wrong with them, your oviducts is the first port of call. So, absolutely. Obviously, that's the rest of the reproductive tract looks fine. So, you should then, after that, get multiple foals out of that mare. So, yeah.
You mentioned there the ovaries being flushed with that mare. What other surgery options are there? There's supplements as well, like Regumate. What are the options to people that, when they look at that record and they get the information, if a mare's a bit tricky, what are they?
Well, I think you get your veterinarian to have a good look at that mare as soon as they go back to the farm. And many, I'll find dry mares, they might be urine pooling, they might have a cervical abnormality. There's various other things we can fix surgically. But if there's nothing obvious, also, if you've tried breeding that mare I think, we say if you've bred that mare 4 or 5 times and you have no reason that mare's not gone in foal, then you need to flush the oviducts. And you sometimes need to flush oviducts in a maiden mare that's barren too. So they just get blockages in them, same as people.
Calf licking as well. That's another thing.
Calf licking is a fairly basic procedure that we do to a lot of mares to improve to just stop them from getting shit in their reproductive tract. So many mares have,
in simplest terms,
relatively poor perineal conformation, especially if they're a bit underweight. So lots of maidens become a bit underweight. They might improve as they put on weight, if they're allowed time to let down. So ideally, don't Catholic mares for a few years into their reproductive lifetime. So, and I think we've had really good results with urine pooling mares by doing uteropexies as well. And if you do a uteropexy on an older mare that's full of fluid, I think Dave Whishaw might have had one of those a couple of years ago. That I said to him when it arrived at the farm, I said, "There's no chance I'm getting this mare involved if we don't do this surgery, Dave." And basically, you get a 3-in-1 improvement in results, because if the uterus is lifted, uterine clearance improves. You don't get any urine pooling. You don't need to do a urethral extension, because the whole of the reproductive tract's moved caudally, and you also get improvement in perineal conformation, so you get less contamination of the reproductive tract just all from that one procedure. So those older mares that are like that, that's another procedure I really, really like doing.
Sorry, David, go.
I was going to say, just to answer that question, is there anything that is a no-go? I think for me, colic surgery is something that we would nearly treat as a no-go. If a mare's had colic surgery, the chances of her needing subsequent colic surgery, I think, are 200 or 300 times more likely. And I think if they've had 2 colic surgeries, the chances of having a third is, Katie would tell you, is astronomical. So I think you want to have a large appetite for risk if you're buying a mare that's had colic surgery. But
It
I
does
think
slightly depend on what they had at colic surgery, but
Yes, yeah,
most
so-
broodmares will have a colon torsion, and I think if you've had a colon torsion, you have something like an 80% recurrence rate. So, so occasionally we do pexy those, so sort of tie them to the wall of the abdomen. But yes, if she's had a previous colic surgery, she's highly likely to need another one in the future.
And I think we talked about torn cervixes before. Once again, if you've got a torn cervix, the chances of that mare being able to keep an infection out of her uterus are extremely low, and therefore getting her in foal will be extremely hard. And if you do get her in foal, getting her to retain a pregnancy will be extremely difficult. But outside of that, I think it's your appetite for risk and at what discount you can get the mare. You know, at the end of the day, you're looking for value. We're all risk takers. We're all dreamers. We're all trying to make breed a good racehorse and make a dollar out of it. So it's what you can work with within your business, and certainly putting mares on treatment, be it Regulate or Altrenagest, keeping them on TMPS if they've got a thickened placenta and you're trying to manage placentitis. Caslicking mares is pretty much standard now. I'd say 60-70% of the broodmare population would receive a caslick before they're 12 years of age, would be my guess.
Yeah, I would say most mares after 12 years of age are all caslicked. So yeah. I mean, I think cervical abnormalities is probably the greatest risk, and so that would be a deal breaker. I mean, there's only so much Regulate can do. So
Yeah.
It's funny, we were talking about nutrition before and how we don't like our mares too fat leading into the breeding season. A big no-no for us buying mares is if there is a fat mare and it's due in October or November. No matter what the pedigree is or what it's in foal, it's going to be a no-go for us. Purely because if you're going to stump up and spend 200 grand, and the three of us were just talking about how important nutrition is, you've got to weigh that up. It's interesting, the broodmare market, because we all like them to look them a certain way, but then what we're doing back at home is completely the opposite. So it's just alluding to risk. And I think another important, we actually went to bid on this mare today. Another key thing to do, she obviously missed in 2024 and 2025. It's very important to look up what stains she actually missed to. I mean, say she went to Extreme Choice and she missed in 24. Well, you can completely understand that.
That was actually the next question. Are we too quick sometimes to pot the mares on their record? We used Street Boss as an example before. If a Superstar had gone to Alabama Express and missed, then you are more likely to look on her a bit poorly. But you have to look at the stallion and when they were last covered as well. If it was a November cover or October cover, a November foal, those are the things you need to take into consideration. Are we too quick to look at their record and go, it's the mare's problem?
I think fertility is, a three-pronged effect. It's management, it's the mare, and it's the stallion. And there's very limited things we can do in improving fertility in stallions, in thoroughbreds. So management of the mare around cover is critical. We need, if a stallion is subfertile, then that stud needs to be if they're not accepting the mares to set up themselves, then they need to be communicating really well with a breeder. So those mares can be covered on the point of ovulation. It's no good getting busy stallion is covering for a day. He's he might be struggling a bit, but we're not telling the clients that they can bring their mare in for cover until the day of service, because the chances of her being on the point of ovulation, if we haven't given the ovulation drugs, is 0. So that everyone's wasting their time. And, the whole point is the stallion farmers want to get the mares in foal, the breeders want to get the mares in foal. So we all need to be communicating adequately so that we get the best results for everybody.
Agree.
Absolutely agree. Communication is key. From a broodmare farm perspective, Victoria and New South Wales are the predominant farms we deal with, and we're continuously touching base on that. From a broodmare perspective, we want to be ovulating a mare off within 24, 48 hours of a cover. So to know where the stallion's at fertility-wise, even his libido, that helps us get the best possible outcome, as Katie said, because everybody's looking for the same outcome, right? Like the stallion farm wants them in foal, we want them in foal. So if we can work together that way, we're getting the best result for everything.
Yeah, I agree. Communication's important, and even in our jobs, communicating with farms. So to finish, just before we might have a couple of room for questions, what is the best piece of advice you give to someone that's wanting to enter the broodmare market today? I suppose everyone would have a short little piece.
I'll start. I got two. I've spent a bit of time thinking about this question. The first thing is, if you're young, don't buy broodmare 100% of yourself. Get a group together, buy maybe 1, 2, 3, where you all got a leg in it, or 20%, so you can spread the risk and have a bit of enjoyment that way. Because if you buy one 100% and you've stumped up 20 grand plus 30K running costs plus the service fee, you're going to do your ass pretty quickly. And we need young people in this game. I remember when I first started out, there were a lot of young people getting up and buying their own farms. This day and age, post-COVID, we're not seeing much as that. One of our core models is we very rarely buy mare 100%. We have partners just to spread that risk, because, as I said, if you do get something wrong, it can hurt pretty badly, especially in this day and age. And another one is we're sort of aiming to breed Magic Millions horses, Melbourne Premier horses and Easter horses. That's sort of the direction we're taking at the minute. And if you add up how many yearlings are sold between those three sales, we've only got about 2,000 spots available. You start adding up how many mares Yulong have got, Newgate, Arrowfield, Coolmore, Widden, the rest of the big boys, the actual spot that's available for farms like us three, and that's for younger people in the industry too, it's quite slim. So whatever you do, you need to remind that if you breed an average horse, this is the reality of business in any walks of life. They're going to take the big boy's average horse before yours. So sell it as a weanling, don't take it through, or when you're doing your mating, maybe drop your mare just down a grade by 5 or 10 grand and put yourself in a really good position where you're in the top 25% of that crop. One thing we do on an annual basis is whenever we sell a yearling is actually analyse where we sit for that foal crop. And we always like to make sure we're in the top 15 of that foal crop out of 150. And, you know, if Spirit of Boom average is 150 and you're outside of that top 15, you're just doing it for fun. You're not doing it as a business. So at the end of the day, it's just a mathematical equation. It's not as though it's unfair or anything like that. It's just the natural walks of business in life. And another thing, if your mare's getting bounced by the studs, simply put, your mare's not good enough. You need to either get a better mare for that staying or go to a staying just below that level to help yourself out.
Fantastic advice.
I think my advice would be have a look in the mirror and say, are you resilient? Because if you're not, you'll soon become resilient, or the industry will chew you up and spit you out. So it's certainly not for a lot of people. I think James's comment, spreading your risk, is a huge one. We're seeing all the players do it, and if you're new, I think it's imperative you spread your risk and get into bed with people that have got skin in the game and have lasted more than 10 years. You know, like, there's so many people that come and go, and I think if you are new to the sport, or the breeding industry, as we'd like to call it, is find somebody that will take you in and help you spread your risk, probably amongst a minimum of 5 mares. And I think my biggest advice, and my advice to anyone that picks up the phone to me and wants to send us a mare or wants to use our services, is to understand what their goals are. You know, I want to understand what their goals are. And a lot of people, they want to breed a horse. And I can help you breed a horse, but what do you want to breed the horse for? Do you want to race it or do you want to sell it? Oh, I don't know. Well, you need to go away and work out what you want to do. And then you also need a B plan and a C plan, as James said, and you need to be looking at your stock at every point, whether it's the mare and foal, whether it's when the foal's at the foot, whether it's a weanling or a yearling. And sadly, not every horse you breed will go to the A plan, and the reality is probably only 50 or 60% go to the A plan, and you're often looking at the B plan and the C plan. And so saying to these people, what is your goal and can you afford to race this stock? And if you can't, maybe this is not the industry for you.
Yeah, I can agree with all that. That's definitely. When we're speaking to owners and people that want to get broodmares, that is a common thing. It's what is your end goal, and they've not thought about it. It's I guess the thoroughbred industry can be described as a bit of a luxury industry, and people can get caught up with the idea of it's going to be a fantastic thing, but if they don't have the plan to and be able to execute it, it becomes a real issue, and it gets back to risk management, doesn't it? And one thing we haven't talked about is budgeting and the finances of it, and basically whatever your budget is, double it. It's not that bad, to be fair. But
You've got to be in it for the long haul.
You've got to be in it for the long haul. You've got to have, as the guys said, a B and C plan. And you've got to be aware of the risks that are involved and the extra costs that could happen. We don't need to focus too much on it, but we've got to be able to account for the worst case scenarios. And because they are out there, we're working with an animal at the end of the day, so there is a lot out of our control, and we've got to be aware of that.
Yeah, 100% agree with these guys. Like, if it's a new person, you need to find a farm with a manager you trust. If you can, get them to put you into a couple of horses a little bit each. You need to be assured that that asset is going to be looked after by the manager, by the staff, by the vet, by the farriers. It's a whole team effort, and you need to make sure that that's going to get the best care possible. And I think one thing that a lot of new breeders don't realise is there's huge highs in the industry, but there's more huge lows. And I've had a lot of less experienced clients tell me how traumatized they are by things that happen around foaling time, and that some of them haven't wanted to go on and breed that mare because they were so traumatized by what happened. Well, they weren't there. We were the ones that were there. And, we had to deal with all that stuff. And they simply have absolutely no idea what we went through. And they have, they then don't feel like they want to continue. And I think, they don't know about the costs. If we have a bad foaling, we might save the foal, but it's going to need, serious neonatal care. And they haven't, factored that into their budget. They haven't factored C-section in. And I think, it's important for managers to have that conversation with their clients. What happens if shit does hit the fan? If we can't contact you in an emergency, what calls do you want me to make on your behalf? Because that's where I get, so much backlash between managers and clients. The client wasn't happy with what we did because we did everything to save that animal, but they couldn't pay for that, or they didn't. They hadn't factored that into their equation. And then that's the scenario that we find ourselves in most trouble, because that client was uncontactable at the time, so we had to make a call. And people are unaware of all those things, and it's foaling. It's seriously high risk.
And yeah, if you have that contact with someone, or you've got taken a share with friends and you're with someone you trust, then you have that knowledge and you are spreading that risk. And hopefully people, enjoy the breeding side of things and don't have a bad experience and don't want to come back, because we don't want that to happen. We want people to want to be involved in this industry. James, did you just have something to add?
Yeah, get some mentors too. I've been blessed. I've had three between my old man, another guy who's probably very business orientated and a trader, and then an agent who travels between both hemispheres and loves a drop of a wine. But all three have been very good to me. but they completely approach this industry in very different ways. So I think not only having one mentor, but having multiple to get you thinking. This industry is not just, that's just what works. I think you've got to be very open-minded because there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat in this industry and also earn $1.
We have time for questions. If anyone had anything they'd like to ask, please put your hand up and I'll bring the microphone around.
In terms of if you have a broodmare who's, you know, a beautiful looker, good on the racetrack, but say she's gone, her first 2 covers haven't been to ideal stallions, how do you tackle that sort of process?
Obviously, that mare's sadly been discounted a bit. I think the average mare is pretty well written off as far as her broodmare value after her first 5 foals. So they've got her first 5 foals to get out what she is valued at. Now, after that, she may be a proven broodmare and she goes up in value, but the average mare is a failure, is the reality of it. So she's lost 2/5 of her value, and probably a bit more if she's been poorly mated. If she's been mated up, she might not have quite lost 2/5 of her value because there's an increased chance that her first 2 foals will hit the ground running. But I'm just trying to think of a complete spastic stallion that I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus. But if she's been to an absolute dud 2 years in a row, there's a good chance she's lost more than 2/5 of her value.
I suppose, David, is that also important for you? And obviously you would understand the mare, but when a buyer's come along to inspect the yearling, is it being on the front foot with them saying, oh, look, I know she's none from 3 to unraced, but it was da-da-da or da-da-da.
Yeah, and I've actually got the stallion too. There's a stallion down in Tassie who was called Gigi's Americain, and he was owned by Paul Geard, who's now deceased, so I can throw Paul under the bus. But Paul dreamed of having his own stallion, and he went and bought a son of Americain that was Aurora, and it could not win a maiden at Devonport. And then he decided that it was going to be the next coming of Street Boss or Reduced Choice or Extreme Choice. So he sent all his mares there. And so we bought one of his elite mares. She was a 12-time winning mare. She was a multiple 2-year-old winner. She was a multiple stakes winner. She won 400 grand, but her first 2 foals had been to GG's Americain. We actually foaled the second foal down and gave it to Jaden, one of my staff here, and said, for Christ's sake, you're not branding it and we're not returning this to the stud book because it is devaluing the mare. And then when we sold the foals, we said, look, this mare's had 1 foal to race. The stallion could not get a winner in a walking race. I promise you, he's a dud. So I think disclosing that is really important, and it's a value opportunity. You know, like, are you going to go and launch in and pay $300,000 for this stakes winner? No, you might have if she was off the track, but you could probably get her for 60 or 70 grand because she's been devalued.
I'd just like to know, I know Katie's answer, but for you 3 guys, how many of your mares do you have on treatments? Like, do you just give mares treats just because they have been in the past, or when you've purchased them, they say, oh, they're on Solprum monthly, Regimane, or aspirin? Do you just do that, or do you always just go pregnancy by pregnancy and if they need the treatment?
I sort of play it as it comes. I'm anti-treatment unless we have to actually step in. So between myself and my brother, any mare that turns 15, we always pull a blood every year that they get in foaled to test their progesterone levels, and we won't actually start on Regumate until we actually have to, whether that's 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 or 20. We have some mares that are 18 and 19. They're not on any treatments at all. So for me, yeah, I'd like to stay out of it as much as possible because once you start, you can't stop. So sort of just play it each as it comes for me.
Yeah, Tam, I'm very much like James. I came from a generational business where my mother used to treat anything that had a placentitis the year. She had a placentitis the year before, so we should put her on Trimsulfa or Solprum. We're lucky to have in-house vets now. What percentage of our broodmares would be on treatment, team? Like 2%. I would suggest we would start scanning placentas between 100 and 120 days. And Katie will probably give you the stats. Scanning placenta thicknesses is not a be-all and end-all, but it certainly gives us an indication for mares that may have placentitis. But I think mares with good nutrition that have been cas-licked, if you're measuring the placentas, I think the industry is throwing far too much treatment at mares that don't need it, but studs want to get their service fees. We're spending a lot of money on mares, and I think we're doing it to make ourselves sleep better at night at times.
Yeah, I'm very much the same as the last two. I think one of our biggest issues in our industry right now is antibiotic resistance. So it's we're running out of antibiotics to use on some of these bugs that are coming up nowadays. So we're very much the same. We will, on our farm, we'll scan them up to 60 days, and then from there on, I scan them 2 more times. And if they've got any histories or an older mare, like James said, we'll keep scanning them right through till July to just keep a track on it. But we're much more pro just managing and watching rather than intervening with any antibiotics. And we do the PG bloods as well, obviously. We trying to avoid the synthetic progestins when we can.
I just wanted to ask about when you were saying about spreading the risk, like you've got a broodmare and it is very expensive. How would you go about contacting someone who you might want to go, like would you go to the stud and see if they could give you a deal on a good service fee, or some other broodmare people that might be interested in going in your mare? Like, not like syndicates with racehorses, you can look them up. How would someone go about going in shares?
Yeah, I think it's the way forward in this industry now is mare syndication. So just as you said, the racehorse syndication stuff, it's becoming increasingly popular, and a lot of farms are doing it now. So even on our farm, for example, within our own client base, we're starting to work on that, and we're finding that people, it's a risk management thing for each individual owner. Rather than having 1 or 2 mares 100% owned, they're more into owning 10-20% of a few different mares. And I think that's, as we go forward, that's going to be more economically viable for people, participants in the industry, and even to a much smaller level as well. And I know there's many other farms out there doing it. I think we'll actually, there's going to be a radio podcast on this soon on RSN, so it'll be interesting if that's we can listen to that. But it's quite a forward thing.
Would I be right? Sorry, Will, I was just going to say you could also speak to people like us at Inglis if you're not sure about who could be best to. We want to keep people in the game as well, so we're not about to give people bad advice about who they should maybe speak to.
And I suppose it's a great initiative of the seminars like this that give you exposure to certain, I suppose they call themselves industry professionals, that next time you're walking around the sales ring, you can go, oh, Ryan, it was great to see you at the seminar. I've got this going on. Is there any advice you can give to me? And then I suppose it's our job as Inglis is to nurture people in the industry and make sure they have, within reason, a good experience to have longevity within the industry. And I suppose giving us a plug here with the initiatives of having this, that you can go and see Katie, you can go and see Ryan. Obviously, David Standing Stallions down in Tasmania, you can go to chat to him about sending certain mares to stallions. And I'm sure, and James, being biased, they will give you the best advice that suits you because they want to see you in the industry for longer than a couple of years. Do we have time for one more?
Yourself?
Ready to go. Katie mentioned cas-lick on older mares. I want to ask the industry professionals. I think you mentioned that anything from, you believe from 12 years on, you should cas-lick as a matter of course?
Not a matter of course, but most mares by 12 years old will have had 5 or 6 foals, and just to the nature of the foals coming out of that, every time there's going to be some trauma. The seal's not so good. I'll obviously assess each mare as they come through the crash, but I would say the majority of my mares over sort of 12, 13, 14 will be cas-licked.
And that's true of the professionals?
Yeah, look, as Katie just said, it's a case-by-case basis for us. So yeah, obviously there's a higher chance of requiring Caslick as the mare gets older, but we're analysing each individual one. And look, like it's a rare thing, but even a maiden mare off the racetrack, we've had them many a time come to us with a Caslick already in because they might be sucking air in the in their race career. So they've started from a very young age, and it's one of those. Often it's one of those procedures that once it's done once, it's you've created the monster, and you've got to just even if you don't like to do it, it's something you've got to probably keep doing because we've developed some scar tissue there, and we've probably affected the conformation in a certain way. So yeah, definitely a case by case basis. So regardless of the age.
So thank you to our panel. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask anyone on the panel. And obviously the Inglis Bloodstock team are always here to help. And there is an Inglis digital sale in 2 weeks' time where you can possibly buy a broodmare. Thanks for your time.